Hey, do you know that 20-year war we fought in produced an absurd amount of medical innovations? Civilian medicine used to teach that if somebody was bleeding, you applied direct pressure, then you tried lifting the extremity above the heart, then you tried applying pressure to a pressure point inside maybe their arm or their leg, and then as a very last resort, you would apply a tourniquet. And for decades, the idea was that tourniquets were a last resort, and that you would only put them on if you thought you were going to lose the limb anyway. And then we got into a bunch of modern wars, and we gave everybody armor so that most of their damages were to their extremities, and we kept having people bleed out. Till we started slapping this bad boy on everybody. This here is the CAT tourniquet, combat action tourniquet. Apparently it's actually application. I've been calling it the wrong thing for decades. You put this on an extremity, and you twist a little bar, and then you hook it in there, and then you write the time. Boom, done, no more bleeding. This bad boy has saved an absurd amount of lives. They did a whole bunch of research too, and they discovered that you can put one of these on a person for up to 8 hours with no issues. With the usual caveats of most of these experiments were performed on people that otherwise had no other medical interventions. So maybe you specifically have some sort of diabetes or thing where trauma tourniquets are not going to be the best thing for you. But in general speaking, you could throw one of those bad boys on somebody's arm or leg for up to 8 hours. We taught everybody that came through, hey, if you even see bleeding, to put a tourniquet on it. It doesn't matter. A medic will come by later and check to see if it needs to be there. Now, caveat to this, tourniquets are extremely painful. It hurts so bad. But we mostly put them on soldiers. So whenever they were like, this hurts really bad, it'd be like, okay. It's squeezing down so hard that it's cutting off arterial blood flow. It's very, very tight, and it's going to make you feel like pins and needles in the worst way imaginable. They took all the research they did on the battlefields of Iraq and Afghanistan, and all medical outcomes of putting on the tourniquets, and they brought it here to the United States, and it completely changed the way the United States deals with traumatic injuries. And not too soon, because what do we have a lot of now? This one's a lot less interesting to look at. But chitosan dressing is made of shellfish. And what it used to be was a powder, and you'd pour it into people's wounds, and it had an exothermic reaction that burned like fire. Here is my layman's understanding of what this does, and if I'm wrong, oh well. But it's shellfish that's been ground up so much that each of their little particles has the surface area of a football field. And that sucks in all the parts of the blood that aren't clotting agents. And all it leaves behind are the clotting agents. So it essentially makes the blood less liquidy and more clotty. And you pour it in the wound, and then it would just get better. And then they figured out how to make it not an exothermic reaction. So then you just poured the powder in the wound. But then you'd breathe it in, and that's not good to have in your lungs. So they shoved it into a gauze. And now you just pack that gauze as hard as you can into the hole. And that both fills the cavity and has the chitosan effect. And the way we figured all that out was all those horrific stories I just told happened to children after they got shot on a battlefield. Children being the 18-year-olds that we convince out of high school to join the army. That's medicine, baby! If you're thinking, oh, thank God they don't do that in the States, yes, they do. Paramedics, although not nearly given the sort of leeway that combat medics are, would have different protocols in different parts of the state, and you'd be like, all right, you guys are going to give this medicine, and you guys are going to give that medicine, and we're going to see how many people survive heart attacks, and then we're going to give the medicine that survives more of the heart attacks to everybody, because it's called practicing medicine, not perfecting. And last but not least is the Fast One injector. This is to get IV access if you don't have any arms or legs left. So all these needles here, there's another needle inside this base, and these are just stabilizing needles, and they go right here. You jam this thing on the chest, and you apply 40 pounds of pressure, and then a needle shoots out from the center of this thing into your sternum, and that gives me access to give you medications. And they designed this beautiful thing because they found that sometimes people got injured so horrifically that they had no arms or legs left to give IVs to, and they needed a way to get fluids in. So the next time you're thinking about telling every single person that serves in the United States military that they're a disgusting imperialist war dog, why don't you think about some of the medical interventions and also some of the experiences some of these kids had to endure? And remind yourself, if you're not older than a millennial, that the military is going to fill its body bags. And if you don't volunteer, and I'm not saying you should, but if you're like, haha, nobody's volunteering, it's gonna go away. Yeah, ask your uncles and grandfathers about how that went for them. I'm a little biased, but I'm pretty sure that the place that we should have landed on how to treat veterans of that war that we sent them to is somewhere between blind admiration and spitting on them. Just somewhere in the middle there. All right, have a great day. Ka-chunk.